Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, sunny neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very delighted and very, very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. We hope you'll join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, Castbox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a really wonderful show lined up for you today. First up, Scott Rothman and Brian Won are here to celebrate Warm and Fuzzy, great new picture book from that duo. And later in the show, Linda Joy Singleton will be here to celebrate her new picture book. It's called Kid and Kid. Hey, my friends, here's something to think about. What if mistakes weren't something to fear, but something to celebrate? In It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe, young readers meet Bink, a lovable little monster who worries they're not good enough when they struggle or make mistakes. But then, Bink discovers a powerful truth. Every uh-oh is an opportunity. Every question is a chance to grow. And every child deserves to know perfection isn't what makes you special. Curiosity, courage, and self-love do. A must-read for parents, teachers, and anyone who wants to help kids build resilience and confidence. Get your copy of It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe today, because learning begins when we stop fearing the unknown. Hey, parents, grandparents, caregivers, and teachers, are you looking for a fun way to teach important values to your kids? Check out Timothy'sLessons.com.
It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Teaching life lessons to his friends. It's Timothy's Lessons. Forward thinking activities. It's Timothy's Lessons. Building confidence and mental strength. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Wonderful fun sing-along songs. It's Timothy's Lessons. Important lessons on key values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Children's books and uplifting stories. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values.
Check it out today, Timothy'sLessons.com. This episode is brought to you by The Mystery of Mystic Mountain, a great middle grade novel by Janet Fox. Becca Soloway's perfect summer goes up in smoke when her mom flees a looming divorce by dragging Becca to a Montana resort. To make matters worse, her mom's hasty booking lands them not at a luxury spa, but at an aging dude ranch called Far Away. Becca is miserable until she meets the wrangler's son, John, who shows her what might be the first clue to a century-old mystery, the lost treasure of a Robin Hood-like outlaw known as Pearl Handle Pete. You and your kids are going to love this book, The Mystery of Mystic Mountain by Janet Fox. It deserves a place in your family library. We're in for a treat right now. We are going to be celebrating a warm and fuzzy picture book called Warm and Fuzzy. Please welcome to the show the author from Connecticut, Scott Rothman. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hello, hello. Hi, Jed. Nice to be back.
Good to have you back. And joining us from L.A., it is the illustrator. He is also returning to the show, Brian Won. Hey, Brian,
Hey,
how are
Jed.
you?
Yeah. Good to see you. I'm doing well.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to add that, that intro noise.
Crowd noise. Yeah.
I did have a button here I can do that with. I'm really happy to have you both back here. Warm and Fuzzy. Tell me all about it, please, Scott.
So this is a book about these two adorable, somewhat mythical creatures who are going on an adventure and have two very different ways of adventuring and how they look at the whole idea of trying something new. And it's a book about friendship and facing your fears and having fun.
You know, that sounds a lot like me and my wife when we travel.
It's so funny you said that, Jed. Brian, I think you said that about you and your wife.
Yeah.
And it was only after you said that I was like, oh, this is entirely me and my wife. It's a book for adults in relationships.
Well, Brian, I guess you can relate to this. You know, my beautiful wife and I just had a wonderful time in Ireland and Scotland, but we were on an escorted tour. So we saw everything, but it was on a bus, and we traveled 1,200 miles through Scotland and Ireland, and it was fun, but it's not what I usually like to do. And this is the first time we did it. And my wife afterwards said, "Yeah, I think we're going to do many more of these."
How did you feel after you heard that? Were you a little bit anxious?
I wasn't surprised, to be very honest with you. Because I like to just get out and, you know, just drive into a neighborhood and, it looks kind of sketchy. Yeah, it should be fun.
That makes you more of a warm. I think.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because even though Warm and Fuzzy have such distinct personalities, when I look at my relationship with my partner too, it's like we can both embody being warm and fuzzy at different moments of our life. Like there are moments where I will certainly be overwhelmed with the anxiety of newness and all that. And then I need the comfort of my warm in my life to kind of ground me again. But then I can vice versa. I can be that person too. So,
yeah, I guess, Scott, you know, this is, I'm thinking Warm and Fuzzy, different adventures, different ways to adventurize. It describes every family with more than one kid.
I think that's true. I mean, I have 3 children, and you know, you can go on both small and big adventures. In our book, they go on quite a huge imaginative adventure. But yeah, it brings out, you know, that's the fun thing about travel, as you were alluding to, Jed. It sort of like challenges different people in different ways, and sort of, you know, it's a new situation, which is always good for characters. Like you want to always throw them into a new situation and see how they will react. And in this one, it's just a classic pairing of two people who react to the same, or not people in this case, but creatures, characters who react to the same situation very differently.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Brian, what was your first thoughts when you read the manuscript?
yeah, I mean, Scott had emailed me this manuscript and was like, what do you think? We didn't go through the normal process, which was usually an editor, an art director would reach out to my agent, and then I'd read the manuscript. But this was more direct from Scott, which is a friend of, we share a close friend. He's the Kevin Bacon of our industry, I guess, Bob Shea. And so he made these introductions, and I received this manuscript. And so the manuscript had not been sold yet, but I had just fallen in love with the story. And it really reminded me of, like, we had talked about this relationship with my partner as well. Like, there are moments where anxiety bounces back and forth for us. And coming off the heels of COVID, too, I thought it was a very important message that needed to be shared. You know, a lot of kids were coming out of the pandemic. And so it's like just dealing with the anxiety of newness, going back to school, all that kind of stuff that felt really appropriate. So, yeah. Blew my mind when I read it. Thanks, Scott.
My pleasure.
Well, you know, that's something interesting. We were talking a little bit beforehand. It's unusual for a traditionally published book to have authors and illustrators really, you know, have ongoing communication or even communication beforehand. What was the, how did this happen, Scott? Did you, after you shared this with Brian and then the manuscript was sold, did you sit down with the powers that be and say, hey, I think Brian should be working on this?
No, it was, I'm trying to remember. Basically, I had a conversation between two characters that is, more or less what's in the book now. But I always had kind of this conversation. I had written a manuscript. I actually was looking at it today, called like, Come On, We're Going Somewhere. That was the title. And that might have been the title when I gave it to you, Brian. I think
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might have been the title.
I mean, that's literally all I had. Come On, We're Going Somewhere. I had this idea of, two characters going on an adventure. And I had this other idea that I always loved the title Warm and Fuzzy. And I always thought Warm and Fuzzy could be very, I just thought they were great character names. And I've written like 7 or 8 other Warm and Fuzzy books that just simply do not work. No one liked them. Not a person who read them liked them. And I could never crack it. And then I don't remember what the impetus was to spam call. All right, go away, decline. I can't remember what the impetus was, but I did have the idea to sort of mash them together, and maybe the two characters in Come On, We're Going Somewhere could be named Warm and Fuzzy, but that's kind of that's where the ceiling of my imagination ends, and where I need an illustrator I had no idea what a Warm and Fuzzy would look like or what any of this would look like. And it did seem like that, and it seemed sort of essential in order to get the book kind of sold and out there, that you'd have to sort of have an idea of what they look like as you were reading the thing. So, I reached out to, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm sure, I'm close to the truth here, but maybe not.
It all sounds about right so far.
But I had known Bob a little, and I asked him if he knew anyone who would be up for this kind of thing. Like, not all illustrators, for very good reasons, want to be approached in this manner or would respond to this kind of material, particularly at this early stage. I really like working that way, and I've been lucky enough to find illustrators like Brian, who like, being there at such an early stage of development, but not everyone does. So he immediately recommended Brian. And then did I just email you directly, or did we go through agents?
No, you know what it was, Scott? You came to me in a dream and you said, Brian, I have this manuscript that we need to fulfill. Right?
Yeah.
I think you sent me an email. Bob just made introductions, and then, you sent me the email for the manuscript. And I personally also loved the experience because there was this beginning part of it that felt like we were making chili together in many ways, like we were throwing different things. And the story had been established, but we were trying to develop the characters, and it gave me a better insight to what you were thinking too, Scott. One thing I never asked you, Scott, was like, how long have you been working on this idea of Warm and Fuzzy? Has it been in the hopper for a while?
So the idea of doing a book called Warm and Fuzzy was probably in the hopper for years, I don't have a lot of white whales like that, like I can think of like maybe 2 others. But, this one was kind of in the back of my head. And then I will say I loved the conversation that I came up with. Just personally, I really enjoyed it. Very easy to write the dialogue between these two characters. I just didn't know they were going to be Warm and Fuzzy. And I like this idea of going on an adventure. I literally just like the word adventure. That was very fun, but I wish I could remember the impetus to put them together, but I think that's so often how it goes. Like your subconscious is kind of working in ways that you're not aware of. And that's the glorious thing when to me, this was kind of a perfect pairing, not just of these 2 story ideas, but then to find Brian and for our work together. It was really, really fun working with Brian even before we went out with the book.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, so that process too was that, I had the manuscript, and so we were bouncing back some ideas and sketches back and forth. And so this was even before selling the story itself. There was always the potential that this would not lead to anything too, right, Scott? I mean, but
Totally, yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and certainly netted out to something great too. So
That's awesome. So, Brian, what kind of characters are warm and fuzzy? Well, who are we going to be meeting here?
gosh, it is like Scott said, these two characters. I think part of the story was that we didn't want to establish a relationship like parent-child or husband-wife partner, that kind of stuff. Like we wanted to make sure that it was just two beings in a friendship, a relationship, whatever it is that they're in, and they're going on an adventure together. And I kind of like the idea that we can embody both of these personalities as needed for the story. Like there are different moments in our life that we can feel very big and supportive and comforting. Sometimes we feel small and prickly and afraid, so it felt really amorphous in many ways, but, yeah, I wanted to keep it pretty vague how they were the relationship that they had. Yeah. I wanted to make sure they were physically different. Like one had to be big, one had to be small, different colors, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. As you're talking, it reminds me of some of the friendships I had when I was a kid, and very oftentimes would go home and after spending a day and having a lot of fun with these friends, go home and think, we have like nothing in common together. How did we end up being friends?
Yeah, totally how friendships start. Yeah.
But that's like the yin and yang, opposites attract kind of, like warm is this big sort of, no worries, very supportive, very grounded kind of character, I would say. And then fuzzy is like all over the place, overthinker, worried, really fun in his own way, but also, just kind of all over the place, a little fuzzy. And I mean, I have relationships like this just up and down, not just with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, with, I'm sure in 10 minutes after this interview, when I go get a coffee, it'll play out somehow in the real world.
Bob, excuse me, Brian, how do you, for your characters, I've spoken to illustrators who tell me that they carry around a little notebook and they observe people and, sketch out ideas throughout the day. Is that something that you're doing? Maybe see somebody at the mall and think, wow, he'd be a good subject for a bear.
Oh, Jed, I'm revealing my Achilles heel. I'm not the proper artist that you think I am. No, maybe when I was much younger in college, I would do a lot of sketching and sketchbooks, but, I do a lot of doodling when I'm on phone calls or meetings. Like my brain ends up thinking better when I do that. And I like getting to a place where I'm not forcing myself to have to draw something specific. It just kind of loosens the wrist and loosens the mind as well. But for Warm and Fuzzy, there was a lot of iterations, and we did a couple expression sheets too. I remember, Scott, that helped me understand like how they'd react to different situations. But yeah, the act of just doing it over and over again. I remember there was like a style technique change that happened. At one point, I was trying to make it very clean, this line work, and it felt really wrong for the manuscript. And then I jumped into something that felt more like a pencil line work thing, and that to me really started opening up the characters for me. So yeah, I think iteration is really important. Trying to see different techniques and see what feels right for the manuscript.
Jed, can I ask, I don't want to break protocol here. Can I ask Brian a question?
There's no protocol here, Scott. You've been off enough.
Brian, I saw maybe on social media somewhere where you responded to someone and you said that this was like a different style for you, the book. I was wondering what you meant by that. I feel like, I know your other work, and it definitely looks different, but what do you think makes it different?
This one's much more textural. In the past, I've used a program called Adobe Illustrator, which is very controlled, and I can almost like the minutia of every little point and curve. I can control this. But for this book, I used there's a program called Procreate, which makes it feels like I'm drawing on real paper, and it has much more of a natural feeling to it. And so, in that sense, it was a totally different style. I've been kind of gradually getting more towards something that feels more handmade, and it feels more like there's loose inconsistencies. That's like what I'm looking for. I know maybe for most people they won't notice it, but I've noticed in children's book industry, a lot of people have one style and they're consistent about the way they execute it across multiple stories, and it becomes very much a signature thing. But I feel I've been lucky and blessed to explore a lot of different techniques, and fortunately the publishers and the art directors have been really open to it. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I've been really enjoying this for what was established for Warm and Fuzzy, and so I hope to continue that even more.
I don't know, Scott, if you're like me, I just marvel at people who can create visual art and do it so well and do it so seemingly easily, because I can't draw a circle very well.
Well, okay. Well, the grass is always greener for me. Grass is always greener. Like, Jed, your ability to speak so eloquently is fascinating to me. And then Scott, your ability to write so beautifully, like, I don't know. It's a love fest here. So,
I mean, to me, that's the best part of this job, Jed, is, coming up with the words, which, I don't always enjoy the process of doing that, but I certainly, have done it a bunch. But then handing it over to, these amazing artists like Brian and seeing what they do. I mean, again, the same thing was true with Pete Oswald and Underwear Dragon. I just literally wrote those 2 words, Underwear Dragon, without having any idea what it would look like. Warm and Fuzzy, again, was just a title I liked. I had no idea what Brian would come up with, and then getting his sketches back, even those first sketches, was just exhilarating. I mean, it's literally why I would recommend this to anyone. It really is often an amazing collaboration.
Yeah. How did you, because I've met many writers who are so guarded with this is my story, and I have to have control over it, and you're here like going, Underwear Dragon had these 2 words. He gave him to Pete.
Make it sound so easy, Scott.
Well, I mean, not to belabor a point, I'm just in awe of like what Brian does, and those of his ilk do. I literally, Jed, exactly like you, I could not draw a circle. I can make one of those 3D squares that kids make like in 3rd grade. That's like the extent. I can make a turkey out of my hand on Thanksgiving. That's the extent of it. They're just so good at it. Like, I don't think I try in my manuscripts not to give a lot of pointers or suggestions, hints on how I see it. The fun of it is how they see it and how they interpret it. And to me, that's the job. It's like I hand it off to them, and then I get to see their incredible interpretation. I mean, I can't think of, I've been lucky enough to do this a few times, a bunch of times. I can't remember just being horrified by anything that came back. I mean, it's always the opposite. It's always like, oh, they made me look so much better than I could have possibly imagined. I mean, this book in particular, I think Brian's, I'm not just saying this because he's right there in a little box on the Zoom. I mean, it gave this book a few layers of depth that I never knew were there. And I weren't, frankly, in the manuscript. They're there because of the visuals. And I just incredibly appreciative of, the work Brian did on this.
Oh, Scott, I do horribly with compliments, so it's making my skin crawl a little bit. But thank you for that. It's funny you bring up 3rd grade though. I think it really flashed something in my brain, which was like, oh, I remember my 3rd grade friends saying like, draw me a robot holding a missile, I'm riding a turkey or whatever, and then it was just so fun to make those words into a drawing. And I'm realizing that's what the joy of being an illustrator is like, Scott has these amazing ideas and these words, and I'm like, I want to make him laugh and I want to impress him as well. It goes all back to 3rd grade again. So, yeah.
Well, this is great. I recently, we're launching a new podcast for kids in May called Real Magic. And basically, in my 35 years of doing school shows and educational magic shows, some amazing things have happened on stage when kids come up, and I was trying to tell those stories through my perspective, and it just wasn't working. And Jerry Spinelli was on the show and telling me how his career kind of took off when he started writing from other folks' perspectives. And so I thought, why don't we have a stage crew that's going to follow me around, and they're 3 dogs. And I was super busy. I had these talented interns from Emerson College with me, and I said, guys, here's some stories. Let's create some scripts. And they went at it, and I remember the first script I got back, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this isn't the way I told the story. This isn't the way. And I was getting angry. And I turned the page, and everything came together, and I'm like, oh man, this is much better. So I feel like that's kind of what you experience when you're seeing Brian's illustrations, Scott.
Yeah, I think there's like a level of trust, and I trust all. I mean, I've been very lucky that all the illustrators to a person that I've worked with are incredibly talented and have done a ton of things. I mean, they're not unknown quantities out there, that I just trust them to do. If that trust wasn't there, maybe I'd be a little bit more protective. But that I've not run into that. I've done over 10 books now, and I've never had that impulse. Sometimes, with editors, I've had that a little bit more, although I've worked with great editors, but like illustration wise, it's so just beyond me what they do that I wouldn't even know where to begin. If that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should tell everybody where we can go to find out more about Warm and Fuzzy. Why don't we start with you, Scott? Where's your website and socials and all that good stuff?
Yeah. I believe I have a website called scottrothmanwriter.com. I think you get me on this every time, Jed. I never know what my handles are. I think my Instagram is the same, Scott Rothman Writer. I'm on Blue Sky now. I couldn't for the life of me tell you what my address is there. I really like being on Blue Sky. It's like old Twitter. But you can, I'm sure, go in the search bar and look for Scott Rothman. And the book will be available wherever you love buying books, and hopefully your local bookstore and local library. I'm in all the places.
Awesome. And Brian, where can we go to find out more about you, or do you also not know your socials?
You know what? I have a love-hate relationship with social. Like, there are moments where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to really post a lot of things, and then I'm like, I hate myself for posting too much, and then I stop. So, but my website is brianwon.com, so BrianWon.com, and then my Instagram handle is BWON, the number 1, so B11.
All right.
Nothing fancy.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Warm and Fuzzy. It's a brand new picture book from our guests, Scott Rothman and Brian Won. My friends, thanks so much for being back on Reading with Your Kids.
Thanks so much, Jed. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great seeing you again.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Hey, my friends. Would you like to bring a little warmth and magic into your home? Let me introduce you to Welsh Mountain Candles, hand-poured on a working Amish farm in Lancaster County. These all-natural, toxin-free candles are made from palm wax with a stunning crystallized glow, rich coconut apricot wax for a creamy finish, and essential oils for a pure, refreshing scent. Whether you're winding down, setting the mood, or just love a great candle, Welsh Mountain Candles are crafted with care and made to be shared. Visit welshmountaincandles.com. Use the promo code JED10 for 10% off your order today. Light up your home with Welsh Mountain Candles, where every candle tells a story. Join us right now from Northern California. Our guest today is not only an author, she is a bit of a kidlit historian. Please welcome to the show the author of Kid vs. Kid, brand new picture book from our guest, Linda Joy Singleton. Hey, Linda, how are you?
I am just fine. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
You are most welcome. A little bit later on in the show, I made reference to you being a kidlit historian. I want to talk about that, but first, let's tell everybody what Kid and Kid is all about.
Okay, Kid and Kid, which I guess I should hold it a little bit while I do it. It is a picture book about a little girl going to the county fair with her young goat, another kid, and how everything they do, it's told in just short verbs and homonyms. Everything they do is either parallel or opposite. It's like, this is part of a series where I also did Crane and Crane and Sun and Sun. So Crane and Crane was nature versus machinery, where they're the same and yet opposites in some cases. And every word showed a different action on a different page as two families were building homes. And then Sun and Sun was quite different. I mean, got that one here too. Sun and Sun was the only one we actually have different spellings for the title. And it is basically human living in nature with some contrast as well. And so all the words in these three books, all the words are the same word, but in some cases it's a completely different meaning. For instance, in Kid and Kid, one of my favorites is, where is it? Okay. One of my very favorites is play, because the girl is playing the harmonica and the goat is playfully jumping into mud, which does not turn out well. So, yeah.
Very interesting way to write that. Where did that inspiration for this series and that style of writing for kids come from?
Well, quite a few years ago, I went ahead and did one of the challenges where writers will write, in this case, it was one picture book idea a day for an entire month. Kind of like when people will do the challenge and write an entire book in a month, a chapter a day. But it was a picture book idea. And because my husband is a crane operator, and so I've been around cranes my whole life, we've got some cute pictures of the kids, by the cranes, and that's what he did all the time. So I was very familiar with what mechanical cranes did. And I also live not far from Lodi, California, where there is a sandhill crane sanctuary. So I did go there for research, and I got to see all these wonderful birds just everywhere. So the basic idea is I was fascinated with Crane and Crane. I thought, oh, they're doing the same thing. And so I wrote the very first day of that, 30-day challenge it was. My first idea was Crane and Crane. And it just had like lift, lift, sway, sway, boom, boom, because when some of the material that they lift is called boom, the long thing is called boom. So that was the genesis. Now that's not exactly how it turned out, but when I got a new agent and I mentioned to her I'd done this, I said, would you like to look through these 30 different ideas? And the very first one she picked was Crane and Crane. And I was like, I really don't know how to write this book. It's got to be just so short, just a few words here and there. And she's like, oh, you'll figure it out. You can do it. And she was right. I figured it out and I did it. And it sold within like 3 months. I mean, it sold really quickly. And then the publisher decided that they wanted to make it a series of 3 books because there are only 3 words, you know, crane, son, and kid, that have both character, conflict, comparison, and a plot, and a potential for a plot. Because I looked through all the homonyms, and I still get people saying, "What about this homonym? What about this one?" It's like, they're not nouns. It has to be a noun. So it was a challenge, and it just worked out, and now it's over with the 3 books.
Wow, that's really unique. Certainly, it is the first book in our 2,100 episodes that we've talked about that was written in this style. It very much, one of the things that we encourage families to do is to take picture walks through a book to, in some cases, cover up the words if your kid is reading, so that we don't know what the plot is, but we're just talking about the pictures and what it could be. It sounds like this would fit right perfect into a picture walk.
Absolutely. Definitely with Kid and Kid, because the whole time you're following the girl as she readies her goat for the county fair. And so this one is just more of it's a sweet story, but everything they do is kind of like, here's another homonym I love. They're going on a trip in the vehicle, but then as they get out of the vehicle, they trip.
They trip, yeah.
Yeah, so the words are just kind of fun, and it's just got one of the, flop. Just things don't always go well in the about the middle, because, that's the one thing I had to look for. I couldn't just have the words. I had to have some sort of rise and fall of a plot. So each one of them does have it, like in Crane and Crane, there's a storm that tosses everything around. And Kid and Kid, they don't get the expected results from when they show at the county fair, but it's a very happy ending. They still get a happy results, just not that one. And Son and Son, they're going through nature, and there's a surprise at the end. It's leading to what the whole thing is about. And, so just looking at some of these different words, like I got to use the word beam for the sunbeams. But then the next page was beam for being smile, and the father and the son hugging. Yeah, this is such a nice one, especially for like Father's Day.
Yeah. Really cool. That must have been an incredible challenge we always talk about how difficult it is to write a typical picture book, which is typically 500-600 words. And you have told these stories in probably 32 words.
Less. I think it's like 25, 27 words. And in most cases, it's the same word twice. So yeah, it was a challenge to read it. When I did my first story time, I literally consulted with a librarian who is a professional storyteller. And I asked her, how do I tell this with so few words? How do I keep them entertained? And she did work up, she helped me come together with a program that works. Yeah.
Wonderful. Can you give us a sneak preview of that way you present it?
Well, okay, I can do it best with Crane and Crane because I have not had a chance to read Kid and Kid to kids yet.
Sure.
I have a book signing coming up in April, and I will be reading it to kids then. But it only just came out, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Yeah. But with Crane and Crane, this one worked really well once I realized something about it. I realized it can be a exercise program. So I go, everybody stand up. And first I apologize to any teachers. The kids are going to get a little excited for a few minutes. So, and then I just, start off with lift. And this is actually up on YouTube, a shortened version, because my publisher does not allow me to put the entire books anywhere. Yeah. But then we go, then everybody stretch. And usually if I've been giving a presentation, this is at the end of it. So everybody's ready to stretch and ready to do it. And then honk, you can imagine. Yeah, it gets really noisy. And okay, we'll do like one more. I'll tell you that. Oh no, I'll do this one because this one I like a lot. Where is that? Okay. I know it's just the word pick. So the bird's picking up a stick, but in the construction language of crane operators, pick is actually a noun. It's how many picks did you have today? They will say at the end of a day. So obviously the librarian kids might not get this, but anybody that actually knows the business will get this. And with Crane and Crane, my husband and I kind of wrote it together. I wrote the story, but he guided me and helped me pick out what sort of crane to use. We used a lattice crane. We had to use an older style because nowadays so many of them are running on hydraulics and much more mechanically operated, so they don't have the same noises, not quite as fun as the older ones. But he helped write it. My editor literally called up one day, and we had an hour conversation, mostly her talking to my husband, trying to figure out one word. It's like, okay, what are we going to use here? We can't use this. And that was hilarious. I got to admit, I really loved that my editor and my husband, who is very much a farmer now because he's retired and now he raises pigs. Okay, so a little different.
Yeah. Well, it's neat. You know, as you were talking about crane and crane, I remembered in my trip to Panama City, Panama, they were telling me that the crane was the national bird of Panama. And or Panama City, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know there were cranes here." And he kind of laughed and he said, "Look out at the skyline." And there was a crane building a new skyscraper almost everywhere you looked. And so it's more of a joke that the crane, the mechanical crane, is the official bird of Panama City.
Oh, that's fun. That's a cool fact. I didn't know it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's a beautiful city, and it's known as the Manhattan of Central America, really growing, very vibrant, and the people are absolutely wonderful. I mentioned earlier that you are a bit of a kidlit historian. Linda took me on a tour of her library, and I'm looking in her studio right now, and it is just filled to the brim with kids' books. You gotta tell me. I understand you said your first 100 or so books were books from your childhood that you obtained or bought and kept from your childhood. What kept this passion going to? I'm gonna guess you have thousands of books in your home.
Yes, thousands.
Yeah,
easily. Okay, well, it's a long story, so I'll try to condense it a bit here. Basically, I had parents that both loved books and encouraged me, to read. We had books coming in the mail. We would go to thrift stores. Once I discovered that I loved these older mystery series on the, like Nancy Drew, because but with me, there was actually a series called Judy Bolton. That was the main one that I really loved. And this was probably when I was about 9, 10, right in that age group. So, and I remember once going into a secondhand bookstore and looking at just books piled to the ceiling everywhere. And that's when I was like, just my mind boggled. I was like, how can there be so many? Of course, I've kind of proven that there can be a whole lot of books in one building. Just as an adult, I have so many. But so as I started to each time I would discover a series, and there are many, many, I focused on girl series. I was looking for heroines I could really relate to. So there was, Cherry Ames, who was in nursing. There was a flight attendant, stewardesses back then. And then there was a newspaper reporter. And each one of these series that I discovered, I wanted to complete them. So it just became this treasure hunt. My parents were in on it too. For Christmas, many times I'd get books because they'd found for me. So up until I was getting ready to get married and leave the house, I had about 100 books collected at that point of all my series. And then I didn't do anything for a while. I was kind of busy, getting married, having a job for a while, getting divorced, getting married again, having kids. And once all that settled down and I had little kids at home, I was able to jump it back into the writing world and the book collecting world. And I found out there were other people like me. There was an author, the author of the Judy Bolton books, Margaret Sutton, who I wrote to when I was 14. Well, I wrote to her when I was 13. By the time she wrote back, I was 14, which was a few weeks later. So I treasured this letter. I carried it with me every day at school. I mean, I was showing everybody, and she just didn't write back. She was interested in the fact that I was writing, and she was interested that I loved her series, and we became friends. And she's the one that once I was an adult, she clued me in that there were other fans like me. And this was before the internet. I'd not been able to meet anybody else who was just obsessed with the series like I was. So once she told me that, and I started hooking up with these other people, we started meeting and having mini conventions. I literally, I think, went home once with, I think it was about 80 books that we just traded among ourselves at one of these conventions. And that's how I amassed most of the library. Just, yeah, it took a while. It took a lot of years, but it was great. And it was all because of that fan letter. And I even ended up co-writing a new Judy Bolton book with Margaret when we were both adults.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
I'm curious, what's the folks who gather at these conventions, what do you call yourselves?
One of Margaret's books is called Phantom Friends. So that's what we called ourselves because we didn't see each other. This was before the internet. We only had phone calls, which, you know, if you wanted to talk to somebody for like 15 minutes, that was about $15.
Right. Yeah.
So we did a lot of letter writing. And so we were kind of phantom friends to each other. We were friends that didn't see each other, except once a year we started doing conventions, or conferences, whatever you want to call it. We only had maybe 20 people at each one. But yeah, so we met in like, let's see, we did Pennsylvania, we did New Jersey, Indiana, St. Louis, New Orleans, California twice, I think. Yeah, we did quite a few. And
wow.
Yeah, it was great while it lasted.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, then my next question was, is the group still active and can people get involved?
Not active, actually. There's a few groups online. There is a Judy Bolton group online. There's a Judy Bolton website. That's actually where the book that I co-wrote with Margaret was put up, plus a lot of other things that were done because Margaret's daughter took over taking care of the books. They actually got a company to reprint the entire 38-book series into paperbacks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've been gradually buying them because they're like 15 each. I have all but maybe 7 or 8 of them at this point. Yeah.
Is that your favorite series?
To this day, because it was such a huge part of my childhood, I really connected with it, you know, but when the Harry Potter thing was going, I discovered that early on and was crazy about the series. So, cause I love magical fantasy books. There's a series called, the first book's called Nevermore, and it's Trials of Morgana Crow. And that to me is second to Harry Potter. That's how good it is.
Okay. Wonderful. This is really fascinating. And have you ever had a chance to think that there may be some young Linda out there who is going to fall in love with your book so much that they become the next generation's kidlit historian?
You know, I've had some wonderful fan letters over the years. In fact, I was trying to see if I could show you. I started to keep some in my own mysterious chest. But I don't get quite so many anymore that, you know, are this through the mail. Yeah. So most of my fan mail now is in a binder. These are all fan letters. And this is one of the ones. So I always encourage kids. I always write back. When I was doing a series called The Seer, and this was about 20 years ago at this point. It came out in 2004. The Seer was very popular. It did really well. You could even find it in airports. I mean, yeah, it did really well. And I got a lot of letters saying, you got my child reading. One fan even went and her daughter, she passed on the books to her daughter, and her daughter loved them too. So for her daughter's 18th birthday, they both got tattoos of the book covers.
Oh, wow.
So I've had that, and I treasure it. I love the letters. They mean a lot to me. And like I said, I always answer. You know, if I don't answer, it's because I didn't get it. So yeah, Yeah. I love hearing from kids, and there's definitely been some for a while when my kids were a little younger, and I lived in Galt, California, which is a little south of Sacramento. There was a bookstore there that was very supportive of me. And I had a book club there, which met once a month. And then when the store closed, I actually took some of the kids continued to come out to my house. And we still had a book club for a while until they got a little older.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I think they follow me on Facebook.
Well, that's wonderful. It really is wonderful that you have been able to make a career out of something that you love so much.
I am very, very blessed, very grateful. I know I've been really lucky, and I have things coming out in the future, which I'm hoping will actually be my biggest yet.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, let's have you come back and celebrate those new books. In the meantime, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Kid and Kid, Son and Son, Crane and Crane, and find out more about you.
Okay, well, first of all, it's really easy. You know, my website is my full name, so www.lindajoysingleton.com. On my website, all the books at this point are included, and they have links. Plus, I have educational downloads for games and activities that go with each picture book.
Huh?
So, also my Curious Cats Spy Club series, which is the one I get most fan letters for now. Okay. It's, that one I have like a spy kit for kids and a Save the Cats game. And so there's a lot of fun things on my website.
Wonderful. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Kid and Kid. It is part of a beautiful picture book series from our guest, Linda Joy Singleton. Hey, Linda, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. You know, the best way to make sure you don't miss a moment of reading with your kids is to subscribe to the show. You can subscribe on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can subscribe wherever you find Reading with Your Kids. Of course, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. We're also on Blue Sky, but I have to remember what my handle is there, so we'll tell you next time. We'd also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and of course, our YouTube channel is youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. Hey, if you're an author, please be sure to go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the Authors Click Here button up at the top of the page. That will take you to a page where you can learn how you can be a guest here on Reading with Your Kids. It's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans all over the world about your fantastic children's book. You can also learn about our very affordable and very effective promotional services. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guests, Scott Rothman and Brian Won. Please be sure to check out their warm and fuzzy new picture book called Warm and Fuzzy. Also want to thank Linda Joy Singleton. What an amazing site. Her home is filled with thousands and thousands of books. Please be sure to check out her new book, Kid and Kid. It's a great picture book. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Cheray, Megan Boucher. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. And thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
Bye.